So let's talk about you guys individual or specifically and the area of business that you guys are in. Welcome back to the Culture and Legacy podcast, where we are having candid conversations with entrepreneurs talking about life behind the scenes of our businesses. And if I'm being honest, this is the episode that I have really been excited to have. If I can think of one episode that can really define this podcast, this is the one. And so today we brought together a panel of Black entrepreneurs, and we're just going to talk about our experiences as Black entrepreneurs in America. And, hopefully that if you're listening and watching, that you can get some insight from this. So we're going to give each person a chance to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do. And we'll start with Shedrach. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Matt. How's it going?
I'm, live, no COVID. So,
Yeah, that's a blessing, brother. Yeah, so as he stated, my name is Shedrach Rowry. I have multiple businesses, actually. I guess the most prominent one would be the creative content business, where we equip and inspire through various creative expressions, music, video production, songwriting. Also, the Levite Laboratory, where we travel around and just uplift people with music workshops, training sessions on songwriting, and just traveling the world and just inspiring people.
Cool. Lahoma.
Yeah, I'm Lahoma Dade. I'm doing great. I'm Lahoma Dade with Events Unleashed. I am professionally an event planner full-time. I help clients with their weddings and helping their day come to life. And I also help nonprofit organizations who serve the underserved. I specifically help fundraise for nonprofit organizations to help them try to move their mission forward.
Great. Sterling.
Yes, I'm Sterling Smith. I'm the founder and CEO at Sandbox Commerce. Sandbox Commerce is a no-code mobile app builder for retailers who use Shopify or BigCommerce. We also support 3D Cart. We've been at it for about 3.5 years, and what we're known for is helping kind of retailers who would traditionally spend upward of $200,000 within the first year to build a native iOS or Android app to increase engagement with their customers on the go. We allow them to do that starting at $99 a month, and really focus on helping them increase engagement before they start shelling out a ton of money on building a mobile app. So again, thanks for having me here, Matthew. I'm glad to participate in this call.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have us all on. And so I feel like, between the four of us, we have the creative industry covered, and music industry, event planning, and tech, which honestly, we would say there aren't a lot of people of color in these industries. And so just to jump straight into it, why is Black business, why is that so important? Why is that even a thing? People who don't understand are like, why do we have Black owned business? Why is that specifically a thing? It can be divisive. And for people who don't understand, may even say it's racist. But of course, we don't believe that. And so for people who don't understand that, or even just explain what is so important about Black owned business specifically.
I'll take a stab at it. I think Black-owned businesses in America means something different than other places. I think in America it was a response to exclusive practices from other people, and so when they wouldn't, hire us or give us opportunity, we went and created our own. Kind of like the historically Black universities. It was a response to racism. And so I think in the same way, Black-owned businesses is a response to just being marginalized. It would be beautiful if we didn't have to categorize it as a Black-owned business, but this is where we are.
I think if you look at that, go ahead, Sterling.
No, please go ahead, Lon.
I think if you look at the data, you can see the disproportionate effects of businesses of color and Black-owned businesses. And I think it's important to emphasize Black-owned businesses for me specifically because of legacy, and really helping those coming up behind me know that there are people that look like them who are doing things that they're doing. So for me, it's also as inspirational and aspirational for young children of color who are looking for, who want to get started in tech or want to get started in event planning to see someone that looks like them. So it's really it's kind of a moniker to be able to help identify from a community standpoint of, there are people out there that look like me that are doing this because what is shown on TV and magazines doesn't reflect normally people of color. So it's a great opportunity in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I served as Google Code 2040's entrepreneur in residence here in Austin. And one question that, or one statement that the leader, Laura Weidman Power, mentioned to us while we were going through the orientation was that, the average Black household made a family of four had an income of about $17,000 a year, whereas the average white household income had an average of $70,000 a year. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, hey, wow, this is crazy that there's such a huge wealth income gap. And one thing that was important to that organization is really I've taken on as well as a key mission that I want to help support is helping to shrink the wealth income gap between white and Black people. I mean, I think that the fastest way, two of the fastest ways, in my opinion, to help to bridge that gap quicker than any other way, based on my studies, is through business ownership and also STEM and technology, right? So, I think that business ownership allows us to, keep, retain wealth and pass wealth down to future generations. So that's why I believe that Black-owned businesses are important more than ever.
Yeah, I think I read that the wealth gap between Black and white people in America is like 228 years, just to close that gap.
Right.
And which is, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, what even in business, when we talk about, I read forums and stuff online, and I read the comment section. I know I shouldn't do that, but there's always people like, what, why is there specifically things for Black people set apart? Because they have, if only they worked harder, or if only they, knew the people, there's opportunity, and and they'll name the same, rich Black people, Oprah, and these musicians, and these athletes that have made it, and they use them as an example of how the rest of us have access to be able to make money. And so why is that not accurate? How is there a few that are able to make it, but majority, as Sterling said, are almost 10 times below household income as everybody else?
That's a great question. I was hoping somebody else would join, hop in first. But
I just talked last. I was like, I'll let you guys go, but I have an opinion. But I'll let you go if you want. Otherwise, I can jump in.
Yeah, I think we can go out of order if you want to. We can go in different orders, right, Matt?
Yeah, whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, I think it's because of that. I think it has a lot to do with access, folks. I think that, in many places, the people who, I mean, obviously, I will not ever diminish the hard work that any person who's achieved some degree of commercial, financial, or other types of success, a person of color specifically. But I think that many of the people who have achieved that couldn't have done it without relationships that they've developed over time. And so I would say that, for the select few that are connected in some cases, in addition to doing the hard work and being talented. I think there's a degree of knowing the right people and being let into those rooms. It's critical as well. As well as opportunity as well. I don't want to diminish that as well.
Yeah, and then that kind of goes back to I think Shedrach was talking about it as of why, you know, the reason why we have HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and why there are specifically programs and organizations for Black people. It's, you know, I guess to shine that light and to help, you know, it's if we want to help a group of people come up, it's going to take sacrifice on other people. You know, it's the same reason why we have a Black History Month and not White History Month, or, you know, these other things, is because there's one group that's being hurt more, and so we need to do what we can to help them come up.
That's right. I also think to the last question, I think it speaks to this mentality that you have to be exceptional to be successful or to be a business owner. You know, when you pick outliers like Oprah and the athletes and the musicians who are famous, all those people are exceptional at what they do, which I'm not knocking that. But so what are you saying though? You can be an average white guy and achieve a level of success that the average Black guy can. You know, so if I'm not Oprah, what about me? Can I start a business and you know, and be profitable and be looked at as a human, a man doing something special? I think that speaks to a greater skewed vision of the Black person. You know, we've always had to work extra hard to get the same, to get average appreciation.
Yeah.
I feel like the issue isn't something you can address on a surface level because it's so systemic, right? So if I am growing up and I want to reach for something and my mom works at the grocery store and your mom is an attorney, you know, you're going to have a different level of access than I'll have even if I'm in the same neighborhood, or whenever you go outside that neighborhood, what you have access to. So I think that the issue is more so not just in today in like the surface level, but the systemic pieces of it, of, you know, redlining in communities. Even when you look at how Austin was redlined, where you couldn't get services if you were Black past, you know, the border of East Austin. So the systemic issues continue to plague us in society today, and we aren't that far from, you know, being free, you know, from slavery or even being emancipated. And we find out 2.5 years later that we're emancipated. You know, I mean, just kind of, you know, it's systemic. So it's not something that the root cause isn't, oh my goodness, we should just celebrate Black business today. But let's talk about how 400 years of marginalization does put somebody at a further back starting point to be able to begin to access wealth. And so if you look at the data around home ownership in African Americans, you'll note that like 7% own homes versus 78% of whites own homes. And that's also because of the, you know, different Fair Credit Reporting Act. So there's a lot of systemic issues interweaved into our culture and our society that have to be untangled to be able to truly address the disparity between Black and white businesses. And it's not about hating one race versus another. It's about really addressing the root of that. And that is the justice and fairness that a community and a culture doesn't deserve doesn't deserve at all simply because of the color of their skin.
So what do you feel like people don't understand about it? Like, why is it that, you know, so we can understand that we need specific things for Black businesses to try and come up and to help the economy and Black household and all these things, but there's still people that resist that so much. Why do you feel like that is?
I'll just jump in really quick. I think it's based on semantics, right? So I have a friend, we were having a conversation and he's like, I'm white, I don't have white privilege. You know, how dare you tell me I have white privilege? I grew up in, you know, the hood in Dallas, so you can't tell me I have privilege. And he was like, but then I had another conversation with a person of color and, you know, privilege is simply being able to drive in your car and not get pulled over and wonder if you're gonna die, you know? And so I think this is like, in terms of semantics, how we've coined the terminology, makes it hard and it makes it an easy way to resist the fact that the disparity exists. So if you took the semantics out of it, of the word white privilege, and just say, look at the difference between the number of Black men who get in their car who are afraid to get pulled over by the police versus a person who's not of color who doesn't have the same outcome. I mean, if you look at the Charleston shooting at the church, I mean, he went to get, a hamburger before he went to jail, and then somebody who had a cigarette in front of a store is, killed by a police officer. And you can just look at the brutality. And even if you just look at a couple instances where if you use the semantics of privilege, it sets people back versus really understanding the data and the facts that exist that show those disparities.
Yeah, you nailed it there, Lahoma. I agree with you 100%. It's the things that, the understanding that, if you look at, some of the most well-known figures who are Black at the top of their game in almost any industry, when it comes down to it, they still deal with the same fundamental issues that the poorest among us experience because of the color of their skin, in many cases, in 2020. That's all good points, though.
So let's talk about you guys individual or specifically and the area of business that you guys are in. What kind of hardships or challenges have you guys experienced that you feel like is because of the color of your skin?
I'll talk about the most recent experience. I mean, I've had several, but most recently, it's been difficult to find commercial space to lease. We can't even really get like a phone call back. Once they see my name, it looks ethnic. We were given one opportunity to go see a space well within our budget, well within our financial means. And I talked to the guy and told him everything we'd be using the building for, and he was on board with it. And I offered to write him a check that day to secure the spot. And he told me, no, just wait. I want to send you an email with my assistant. And the assistant responded one time, and we never heard back, man. So I don't know. I mean, I'm only left to assume it was because I was Black. I mean, I don't know how else to interpret that. And that's been happening for the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, and by the way, we should chat offline. I know a couple really good commercial real estate brokers, and maybe they maybe, if you're still looking, I can put you in touch with a few people here in Austin.
Okay.
Presuming you're in Austin. But it's ridiculous. So for us, I'll just go to the lowest hanging fruit. We've been fundraising for the business since the beginning of the business. And we're just over 3 years old, and have raised an external funding prior to this year around $600,000 in funding from an awesome group of angel investors. But if you think about $600,000 for over a 3-year period, it doesn't feel like it's real VC money or capital that you can use to really scale your business, especially when you do it over an extended period of time. I mentioned on another podcast to the host, I said, hey, look, we had a competitor that was actually in our application snooping around. The CEO was like looking around at how we were doing things maybe 6 months after we started, and he had just started. And in that same time period, he's raised just under $16 million in funding to build a product that competes with ours. And so it's something that you hear from a lot of different founders of color who are running, emerging tech companies. And it's something that has got a lot of press in all the, various tech publications, but the needle hasn't moved at all. Still to this day, less than 1% of institutional funding for early stage founders goes to Black founders. And so, it's hard not to attribute that to race. People might say, well, the fundamentals of the business are different in X, Y, and Z space, but when it's almost a carbon copy, but not as good still as what you built, and they've had, $16 to every $1 of yours, so to speak, or even less, or even more rather, you can these are the things that make you go,
Wow.
That's like cost sterling. Wow.
But I was going to say, but still we rise, right?
Yeah.
We have to. No other choice.
It's almost like, we know, I don't know. I even hate admitting to believe that, okay, if I walk into a space and I have all my cards lined up, I have everything I need, I'm ready to write a check on the spot. We have this fabulous product that is going to help all kinds of people. And I still know in the back of my mind that, like, I'm thinking, I hope that, if I'm being honest, I hope that I meet with somebody that won't see me just for my race, right? Either that, or I hope that there's a Black person in the room because they're going to understand, right? And so it's sad, and I think that for us to think, and Lahoma, I'll still let you share, for us to think that because of my race, I wasn't given a yes. I feel like that, and it happens time after time. For Shedrach, it's been 2 years, and Sterling, it may have been more, whatever, and still to be given no, despite having everything together. Like Sterling said, what else can I attribute this to?
Right.
That's the sad part.
Right.
And I think for in the event planning industry, many people know how representation matters. And so if you go look at my website, Events Unleashed, you'll see a lot of brides of color. And just that one thing is a barrier for many people looking for a wedding planner, simply because you're like, well, you have all these Black people on your site. I didn't know if you service white people. And I'm like, well, if I go to a site and I only see white people, does that mean you don't service Black people? Of course not, And I think that there's beauty in diversity and representation, because oftentimes, like, our culture is robbed in so many ways. And I wanted to make sure that I built a business that was based on diverse and inclusive brides before it was a hashtag, before it was a movement, before it just kind of started to take off and people are now saying, how do you talk to Black people, right? And I did that intentionally because I realized that my heart is to serve the underserved and the marginalized. And I think that we deserve the same kind of day in the same kind of spaces that everyone else does. So I intentionally represent that. And I'll go to a venue meeting and I'll have my white assistant and they're like talking to her and telling, we've gotten so many emails from you. It's been so great. You're so wonderful. And I was like, hey, I'm Lahoma actually, but whatever. So it's just interesting to walk into a space and the assumptions that are made whenever you are with a person that's not of color. It's hard not to assume that it has to do with your race.
Have any of you guys felt, so Lahoma, you mentioned your website, that, a hesitancy of putting your face on your product or your face on your website? Like, maybe if they don't know what I look like, they'll support me. Have any of you guys ever felt that?
Yeah, that's something I just won't even compromise on. And honestly, and sorry to interrupt, Lahoma, I apologize for talking over you, but I'll just say this briefly. I'm done. Like, I'm respectful in everything that I say, especially on Twitter and other places. I don't really go at people. I don't feel like I'm a troll, but I do think it's important to keep it real on all mediums and represent who I am and where I'm from. And if people don't get down with that for whatever reason, then they're probably the kind of customer, investor, partner that I would not want to do business with either. I don't want to break bread and provide those people an opportunity to participate in what we're working on any degree. And so that's always been a non-starter. I think it's thought, I've heard of other people putting a figurehead in place, but that's not anything that's ever appealed to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a delicate dance for me. I made the choice, and it feels like such a bold move to go ahead and represent what I stand for and who I am. Because inclusion doesn't mean exclusion. I think all the time they have to be separate. But I feel like the dichotomy of both means that I can help serve anyone and everyone. And there's not a wedding that there's no such thing as a white wedding versus, you know what I mean? There's not a difference in the work that goes in the back end, whether it be fundraising for nonprofit organizations. You see the disparity there as well. If I work with a client who serves people of color versus a client who doesn't serve people of color and they serve the general population, I see the data shows that fundraising for nonprofit organizations there's a lot of disparity there as well. So instead of trying to hide who I am, like Sterling said, it is what it is. I mean, when you meet me, you're going to see that I'm Black. So I don't want you to be confused about who you're dealing with. And if that is the baseline for what's making you make that decision, then that's pretty shallow anyway. And like Sterling mentioned, like, I don't want to work with you because that's a lot of energy, time, support, and service for someone who doesn't even respect, like, at the human, like, most fundamental level.
I agree with both. I think if that never crosses my mind, but if it did, I would have to change my name too, because I don't know any white guys named Shedrach.
Yeah.
So I can't hide it, man, and I wouldn't want to. I think, like Sterling and Lahoma said, it's an indication you don't really want to do business with those kinds of people, because even if they mask it initially, it'll come back up eventually in another area. And so I'd rather us get it all up front. And that's why I don't mind like being turned down so much. It used to bother me when we were searching for commercial spaces to be, I guess pushed away. But now it's like, do it now, because I don't want you coming and interrupting the business with some racist stuff once we get started. So show me who you are now. I'll be full of who I am right now. You tell me you like it. If you don't, let's not even start a partnership. And I actually told one guy that I met a guy maybe 3 weeks ago, and he showed us his commercial property, and he just began to make every excuse why it wouldn't work for us. There's only one restroom. We're like, well, that's fine. Now it's a septic tank, so you may end up backing it. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
What do you have the space available for anyways then?
I know, man. And so he listed one thing after another. So finally I told him, look, man, you don't want my money, I don't want to give it to you. And I said, I'd rather keep it. So, I don't want to every month have to force you to take my money for this space. So I told him, let's not even go any further. So we just ended the meeting right there. He left, I left. So like I said, I'd rather you show me up front who you are so we don't have to get, bound in the contract, legal contract. It makes it a lot easier. Just show me up front.
Okay. So let's dig into diversity and representation a little bit. And I guess the main question that people may ask, what do I need to do to make to show that my business, my company is diverse? It's kind of like the joke where it's like, oh yeah, I got a Black friend, like what does that look like in the business world? If I am a white business owner, a white entrepreneur, and I have a company, and I want to ensure that my company is diverse, what would you say to that person?
I'd say that from an optics standpoint, it's easy. You want to make sure that you have representation with female, not just employees, but senior leadership. You want to have Black and Hispanic senior leadership. But I think it's a baseline for even a larger company, it should be representative of our society. And that representation should not only be with interns and junior level employees, it should be at the very top. Because if you're going to attract you know, the top talent from HBCUs or state universities or, you know, really anywhere, boot camps, people are going to want to know that they have a chance of achieving the highest level within an organization. And so you want that founding team to be diverse. So from root to stem, so to speak.
Yeah, and I would just make it real simple and like live it, you know, because I think the thing is a lot of people, I know that Sterling just kind of glazed over the word optics versus like it really being in the core and essence of what you believe. So it stems from hiring practices, it stems from creating safe work environments where people of any nationality, background, gender, choice, all that have an opportunity to have a voice at the table. And not just to sit at the table and take notes or assume that there's the note taker when you show up in a room, but really to make sure that every voice and every aspect is heard and included whenever decisions are being made. And also sitting with the differences of people within your organization whom you don't necessarily understand, like versus just assuming that, oh, they're always coming with this, you know, this pro like equality stuff versus like really taking the time to listen and seeking to understand another perspective. And some businesses are so small that maybe you don't have a huge staff or anything like that, but there are several internship opportunities that should be paid for diverse candidates of color, you know, so there's a lot of ways that people can move the needle forward through just being conscious and aware, including the language that you use. That's more inclusive on your website, including the people that are reflected on, you know, the place where people land to find out more about you. So if you want to attract diverse talent, you have to show diversity.
Yeah, I agree. I think in addition, I would tell people to prepare for, I guess, diverse opinions and people disagreeing with you, because I think that's one of the downfalls of including other voices is if you won't listen to them, it is just representation. And Matt can tell you, like, we have a church and we pride ourselves on having diverse opinions. Like, we almost argue every Sunday about different theological points or different interpretations of passages. But I think in the long run,
healthy argument.
It's healthy. It's very healthy and helpful. It gives you a panoramic view of the content that's being discussed. And so I would encourage every business owner to bring people into the organizations that challenge their opinion, that challenges the main thought or the direct, you know, the main leader, so to speak. Because I think ultimately that builds a stronger sense of community and building and company.
Yeah. And I think even to that last point you made, Shedrach, you know, kind of going back to Sterling's point or all of your points, even if you have a smaller organization, you know, maybe you don't have the bandwidth to hire another person, much less, you know, a person of color, but you can still bring in somebody as a consultant or, you know, or somebody else that's respected in your space, that's not the same skin tone as you, to provide that feedback, to provide, you know, those challenging questions to really challenge you. Because, you know, I think even from a smart business standpoint, you know, millennials we're soon we're going to be really controlling the marketplace. Gen Z, like, they're graduating college and looking for jobs. And, you know, I believe those two generations, like we see authenticity, right? Like we're asking those questions, like, you know, to Lahoma's point, like, we are looking at your about page. At least me, I look at your about page to see who's represented. You know, we're looking at your values. I mean, so many companies, and I see this all over Instagram, so many companies, organizations, business products are being blasted for not only saying the wrong thing, but by saying nothing. I'm even seeing colleges and universities, my own school, Baylor University, on every single post, someone's like, how come you haven't made a statement about Black Lives Matter? How come you haven't made a statement about, you know, the government wanting to send international students back home? Why haven't you said anything? And I think when you don't have somebody who is even thinking in that space, you're missing a huge reach. Because if you aren't appealing to these people, then your business is going to fall under.
Agreed.
Sorry, that was just a rant. I was just passionate about that for a little bit.
That was good.
So getting back on, so if you could talk to your younger self before you had, or maybe right when you had the entrepreneurial bug, what would you say to your younger self?
I tell myself.
For me, there was. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sterling. Go ahead, Sterling.
I was going to say that I wish I would have done it a couple years earlier. Not to say that, you know, everything wasn't in God's timing, but we certainly, you know, this journey is not one that you're ever fully going to be prepared for, Sterling, is what I would say to yourself. And it's not all about checking all the boxes, although it's important to make sure you have, you know, savings in place as best as possible, and you have an executive summary, you know, the fundamentals. But you know, you can plan and plan, but at some point you just need to jump off the porch and, you know, reflectively, I think it would be great if I started a couple of years earlier, just because I don't think that you ever are fully prepared to be an entrepreneur. You know, and so that's what I tell myself.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I would have told myself to start earlier. And you will make mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes. So you're going to make mistakes regardless. So it's better to make them early. That way you can build from them and be in a better position by the time you're in your 20s or 30s and be, you know, I guess more successful by that point. That's why I push my kids to be entrepreneurs as well. So my daughter just launched a business. She's 15 years old, and she launched a business this week. And so I'm happy for her. Like, I want her to learn from my mistakes. Like, just start. You'll learn on the job. You don't have to be perfect. You may lose some money, but you're going to make some money as well. And so, yeah, so mainly just start early. Start as soon as you can. Once you identify that passion, I think that's key, because otherwise you'll waste time trying to figure out, which that's normal too, but you'll waste some time trying to figure out what feels most natural to you, what doesn't feel like work. I think if you can identify that thing that motivates you, that you would do, regardless whether you get paid for it or not, I think that's your area of passion and purpose that you need to lean into and just explore that all the way.
I would have probably told myself that to remember that comparison is a thief of joy.
Yeah.
And that this race that we're running in entrepreneurship is a race uniquely designed by God for me specifically. And that there's nothing that anyone can do, because the word talks about, like, God opens doors that no man can close and closes doors that no man can open. So just remembering to stay focused on my own stuff and focus on what God's called me to. And that, like, and so I'm just adding that because starting early is, of course, like, hearing them too is like, yeah, of course, because there was so much fear and there was so much doubt. And it takes a lot of time to realize that the secret sauce is you. It isn't in the thing, because there's a million people doing this, but there's also a divine calling that God has on your life specifically, and just walking in his purpose without looking to the right or to the left, but just staying focused.
Yeah. That's right. Let me also say, my son has a business as well. I don't want him to be left out in case he sees this. But he's 19, but he started his business at 18. He's a photographer. So they're both doing well, very well.
I would, to answer my own question, very similar to Lahoma's, I would say to embrace your own personality in your own skill set, lean into what makes you different. Don't feel like you need to, like, you may have a photo business or an event planning business or a music business or a tech business. You don't need to make it look like somebody else's because they are successful. Like, there is room for you to be yourself, and people will identify with you, and then those will be your loyal customer base. Don't chase somebody else. Don't chase comparison. And that's something that I still have to tell myself every day. Like, you can be different, you know, and people like you for that. And so that's what I would tell myself.
That's good, man. I think I know you want to move on, but I think the difference that you find in your business ultimately becomes your source, your greatest source of strength and money making ability. I think the more you can define and refine, like, how I differ from the other companies that do what I do. At first, you may take a hit for it because it's so different. They don't want that, but that is what sets you apart over time. Like, we know he does this exceptionally well that no one else does. And you know, I'm speaking in theory, but like, I have practical examples of that, man. Like, the thing that I didn't like about myself became the thing that people love the most about me.
Yeah.
You know, and I used to hide it. Like, I don't do music like everybody else do. I don't have that traditional sound, you know, so I kind of hid what I was normally gifted at and try to pretend to be who I wasn't. And some people like that, but I didn't. And so I always left unfulfilled. But the moment I said, man, I'm just going to be me, that's when everything took off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you deserve to be in a place doing the thing that truly makes you happy. You know, entrepreneurship is a fantastic journey. And there's a lot of freedom that can come from that, and a lot of benefit to our society and your own household that can come from that. But if you're coming home unhappy, unfulfilled, then, you know, it's, you know, I think there's a quote out there where it's like, you know, you gave up the 40-hour job to work 80 hours at home. So if you're unhappy that whole 80 hours, and it's like, man, I might as well just come back and work for you know, corporate America or whatever. And yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys last question, and this is a question that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, and I'll let Shedrach answer first, and then Lahoma, and then Sterling. And so, you know, we talked a lot about culture, and, you know, we were talking about, you know, leaving a legacy. And so, what is the legacy that you want to leave?
Wow. How much time we have? Now, I think you can boil it down to, I want to leave a life that, as I stated in the beginning, encourages people, uplifts people, and inspires people. And so I want people to see what all I've done, even though the odds were stacked against me. I came from a poor city, Beaumont, Texas. Like, you're not supposed to succeed out of Beaumont. Like, it's pretty bad, brother. And so to come from Beaumont and to be as successful as I've been, I went since 2000, been self-employed since 2000. And I've seen so much blessing from taking that step. I live in a beautiful home, over 3,500 square feet, 3 cars. And I'm not boasting, I'm just saying, like, when you step out and do what you feel like God is telling you to do, it always works out. So I would tell people to be inspired by that, to not try to imitate me or anyone else, but like, find your passion and inspire other people to live their best life and to just follow their dreams, man. I don't know. I mean, I think that would be my legacy. If you can look at me and learn something about yourself, that for me is legacy.
Yeah. I think the legacy I want to leave, if I had to sum it up in one word, it's empty, right? I want to go knowing that I did everything possible. I explored every single thing possible, and I always remain curious, that I didn't wonder what would happen if I self-published a book. I did it, you know? So I just want to get, like, I literally have this dream of getting to heaven and being like, I didn't even give you that talent, but great job. Like I just want to leave everything on the table and have tried and to leave leave every door open and leave empty where I'm not holding on to anything and I'm not holding things so tightly that God can't use me in a way, and like that I can be able to pour into the next generation of my family. So I'm first generation to go to college. Now all the women in my family have gone to college and graduated from college. So just setting up that pattern of like, look, it's not easy, but just go for it and give it everything you got. So I just want to go empty. So I don't want to be like the person who has all these dreams and wishes and hopes that coulda, shoulda, woulda. I want to leave empty, saying I pursued everything that I felt like I placed on my heart, and I trusted Him with the outcome. And I'm just going to leave it right there.
That's good.
And shout out to all the women in your family going to college. That's huge, Lahoma. And I think that's a huge legacy that your parents are leaving. Having accomplished that, it's as much of an accomplishment for the family as it is for each of you. I'd say that mine would be to help level the playing field using, access. And at this stage of my life, it's access to technology. How do I use the gifts that have been given to me to create products that allow for other people who traditionally have been left out to participate, right? And then the second, later in life, I would love it to and believe it will be a legacy of providing access to capital. I think that this is a building block or a stepping stone, so to speak, to the next phase of empowering other Black men and women to do what we're all doing, but making it just a little bit easier for them to do that and providing them the support that in many cases we don't have. So right now the legacy is to use technology to level the playing field. Next is capital, and who knows what will be after that. But really leveling the playing field is what I want to leave as my legacy.
That's good. So in closing, I want to, so for people who want to connect with each of you or just want to follow your journey or to see what you're about, where can people find you or support you? And we can go in the same order.
So you can look up my name. It's very unique. I think I'm the only one in the world with it. ShedrachRowry.com. You can find me on social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, same name. Shedrach Rowry Creative Content. And as well as the Levites, LeviteLaboratory.com.
So my business is Events Unleashed, and you can find me on all social platforms at Events Unleashed. And my name is Lahoma Dade.
Yes, Sterling Smith. You can find me on the Twitters at Sterling Smith. My DMs are open. You can find me on my website at sterling.oo. If you need an app for your retail business, visit sandboxcommerce.com. But again, I'll encourage you to, check out my website, sterling.oo, the letters, and see if there's anything that resonates and help other people out. So that's where you'll find me.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining me on this panel. I think these are conversations that need to be had more for there to be representation for young Black aspiring entrepreneurs to be able to see and know, okay, I can embrace what's different about me, and I can make money from that, and I can get our family into a better or a freeing place, or even for white people or just other non-Black or non-people of color to see this and listen and man, there's more that I can do to help level the playing field, or there's more that I need to do to show that my company or business or that I am embracing diversity and representation. And so thank you all for joining this conversation.
It's been great, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Great to have it.
And if you are listening or watching this podcast, we we appreciate you guys to subscribe, like, follow, all those things, leave a review. Let's continue this conversation. What do you think? Do you disagree? Do you agree? Do you want to know more? Reach out to each of these people. We're all open and available because we want our world, just our country, our neighborhoods, our households to be better today than it was yesterday. And having these conversations is a step. It's not the solution, but if one person can be open, can open their eyes and open their mind and their hearts to what's going out there and Black economy and Black-owned businesses, then together we can really make change. And that's why we have these things. So thank you again for listening or watching. And until next time, we'll see you all later.